in there.
So how are you anyway?
Oh, Ben, I'm great. Thank you very much for having me on.
We haven't started yet. I'm just hitting record so I can start from a simple editing point.
Okay.
I just chat with you until 11:15 when I just start with this script.
All right. So, okay, mate. Yep. No, I'm all right. I'm okay. I'm just keeping my head down through COVID, basically.
Are you doing your shows from home?
Yeah, I do everything from here now. I don't do any radio in any studios anywhere anymore. So all of my stations I work from here. And you know, when I'm on the air, the curtain comes round, and what you can't see what's in front of me, but I've got my studio. What's in front of me is all soundproofed. And my mixing desk and my processors are in front of me. So basically, I'm sat here in a cupboard, basically.
To answer your question about what mixer we use at my station.
Oh yeah.
I think it's Myriad Pro.
Oh, is it? Oh, that'll be the playout system, won't it?
Yeah.
That you refer to.
Yeah, Myriad Pro.
Yeah, Myriad Pro is good, and it's a company in Hull, isn't it?
Yeah, have you used it?
I have. I'm really quite familiar with it. I set up a radio station in Hartlepool locally online for young children in education, and we use that. It was good.
Yeah, and something. Yeah, I'm currently waiting for some presenters today because I've got 4 more podcasts today.
You are a busy guy.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. I'm in the, and I'm currently heading back into the studio next week, so I'm taking a 4-week gap from podcasting after today.
Well, you've got your priorities in order, it would sound, Ben.
Yeah, and I'm also in talks with other stations.
Good. Yeah, well, you got to network yourself, haven't you?
Syndication. If you get what I mean.
I do.
Do you syndicate?
No, I don't. I've thought about it. I tend to stick with a couple of stations and remain loyal to them, and then move on when the time's right. That's kind of the way that I've worked in recent years, really.
Do you work for RB or TX?
I do both. So a couple of shows.
A guy who I know who did work, I think, on something to do with the BBC, Bruce Edwards.
Oh yes, I know Bruce. He's a lovely fella.
I've
met Bruce a couple of times.
Because he used to work at Up North BBC.
He did. He used to work on Radio Cleveland.
Same one as
Bruce.
you.
And on BBC. I don't know whether he did BBC Sheffield and Hallam, and also he was certainly on TFM up in the north.
There was someone who I tried to track down who used to be on Galaxy and now works for Radio Newcastle. I think his name's Anthony Collins.
Oh, Anthony Collins. Yeah, I think he works for BBC Tees, but he also used to be on TFM. He was the drive time presenter, and you know he's Canadian, don't you?
Yeah. I've tried to track him down, but I'm failing.
Yeah, I don't really know him, if I'm honest, but I know that he went from commercial radio to BBC.
Know him?
Not really. Not really, if I'm honest. No.
Because I'm trying to get him on one of these. I'm trying to get as many broadcasters as possible.
Well, he'll be an interesting choice, won't he?
Yeah, because he used to do the breakfast show on Galaxy before Stephanie Hurst, I think.
Oh, did he?
I'm not sure.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I know Stephanie Hurst as well. Have you heard of her?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, great broadcaster.
Yeah.
Kind of very much Leeds orientated, isn't she?
And West Yorkshire.
West Yorkshire, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because she used to work for Capital in Leeds
Yes, yes, I understand so.
and Viking FM in Hull. Because
Yeah,
that's where I'm based.
yeah.
Hull.
That's the place where Phil White used to work as well. He used to do Viking.
Phil now works for the BBC over here.
That's right.
Have you met Phil?
Yes, I used to work with him at BBC Cleveland.
Good guy.
When he was, yeah, he's a nice fella. Yeah. Does he love his artwork? Does he?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
He likes doing the radio as well.
Yeah, he's a talented guy, Phil White. Nice fella.
Yeah. Did you work with him at Cleveland?
I did. Yes.
As his producer?
Well, more of his helper, really, if I'm honest.
Yeah, as I say,
because he used to self-produce, and I used to help him.
Yeah, he's brilliant, legend, icon. You get the picture.
I do.
Yeah, I'm going to be listening to Greatest Hits Radio probably later on.
I don't know how you get the time.
What?
I don't know how you get the time.
In case I listen out in case any of the guests come on my podcast.
Oh, okay.
It's called Seeking Out the Opposition.
Well, of course it is. You've got your eye on the ball and your ears, it would appear.
Seeking out the opposition, working out their styles, catching them off guard. I'm just going to lock these in and then we'll hit record.
Right. Okay, my friends.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, Ben.
Excellent. Let's go. Let's go for it. Hello and welcome to another Chatbox podcast. It's episode 42 of the Chatbox podcast here today. How are you doing today? Right, let's crack on. As you know, each week I have a guest to talk about their career or job. So let's crack on with this week's guest. It's broadcaster Stu White. Hello, Stu. Welcome along.
Hello, Ben. How are you? Thanks very much for having us on.
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. It's episode 42, which is quite good for me because it's one of my favourite numbers, one of my lucky numbers. There you go.
That's good. Question 5. 5 questions here today for you, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. We're ready to rumble in the jungle, as you would say.
You ready to rumble in the jungle?
Certainly am.
Let's go for it. Question 1. Where did you start your broadcast career?
Well, like many people who have ever had any association with radio, hospital radio was the starting place for me. In Hartlepool Hospital Radio, which was the name of the radio station, didn't exactly roll off the tongue. They changed the name to Ward Sound a couple of years later, but I started off with Hartlepool Hospital Radio in the General Hospital. And I can remember it, I think it was 1982. And the studio was literally just a disused lift shaft, which had been boarded out on the ground floor and literally some tables chucked in. All of the wiring, it was all completely messy. All of the wiring was all over the place. I suspect that in a modern day world, health and safety would have condemned it. But it was a real introduction to the world of what radio was in real terms, really, because back then it was all sound effects, cart machines, and even cassettes in hospital radio were being used. So there was lots of presenting radio programs back then in 1982 was very different from the way it is now, because now you have all of these PC screens and the studios look like PC World. And back then, all of your short prep and research was little clippings out of the paper and put onto pieces of paper and little notes. And yeah, it was physically as hard work as what it was just to actually speak. So hospital radio, it's a great grounding for anybody in radio, and it's a great way to go out and meet people. And it wasn't just studio work, it was studying in the corridor, asking people if they'd like requests. It was going up onto the wards. It was talking to people, and it was building that connection with people, really. And I think that's what radio is all about. So it all started in hospital radio.
Yeah, that's a brilliant start to your career. And it's a brilliant way of how to get into the industry, as I say to all my guests.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, community radio as well. Since the advent of that over the last 25 years, that's also a brilliant way in as well. That's also a good way of meeting the community, meeting people. It's not just all about being behind the microphone, is it?
No, it isn't about being behind the microphone either. And yeah, it's brilliant. And it's a way of how to get your career kicked off, how you say.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's brilliant as well to get your career kicked off. Yeah, it's brilliant. Question 2, who were your inspirations in broadcasting growing up?
Well, do you know, Ben, I knew you were going to ask me this, and I thought I don't want to leave anybody out. So I've written a few names down here, and it's a combination of national and European radio and local radio. So we'll start with the local radio influences, because I was a Teesside lad. Still am a Teesside lad, if I'm honest. I was brought up in Hartlepool, just north of the River Tees. So I was listening to Radio Tees from kind of 1979 to 1988 when it became TFM and onwards. But really, it was the Radio Tees days for me. So there was people like Graham Robb, who used to do Late On, which was the kind of predecessor to the Zoo radio format, really, where there would be lots of people in the studio, and it would be very like a Chris Evans kind of production with a lot of madness going on, and not so much of a focus on music. So that was a very different format back in 1982, 83, 84. So Radio T's Graham Robb, also Dave Brown and his Soul Show, Dave Get Down Brown. I know you've spoken to Dave. He's a lovely fella. He's a Northeast lad as well. And also people like John Simons, who went on to found Century Radio, and Ian Hughes. Of course, some of these names will only mean something to the people from the Northeast. But if you look at also from the Northeast, people like Paul Gough, who's a Hartlepool lad, started off in the mobile discos around Billingham, Stockton, Seaton Carew, Hartlepool, and then found his break with Century Radio. And of course, he was taken on by the great John Morgan, who, well, that was his on-air name. And John Myers, who's sadly no longer with us, John Myers was also on Radio Tees, but he founded the Century Radio Group. So he's a big influence. Morgan in the Morning, he used to be called, if you can remember him, Ben.
I remember watching a documentary about the start of Century. They brought Scotty McClue on board.
They did. And wow, they really smashed it. They broke ground. They weren't frightened to break the rules a little bit in those days on those radio stations with Century in the Northeast. And was it Century 106 in Manchester? That's right. Yeah, they broke the rules a little bit, but I tell you what, it was great radio. Other influences, I mean, you know, we can't rule out Radio 1, really. I mean, I used to listen to Simon Bates, Bruno Brooks. I wasn't a massive fan of Gary Davies back in the day, but you know what? He's certainly come back into Radio 2 recently. And what a broadcaster he is. And also the Radio 1 roadshows really inspired me, because I used to love going down to Seaton Carew, Stewart's Park in Middlesbrough, maybe go down to the one at Scarborough. So the road shows were another way of connecting with your audience. And I thought, yeah, this is great stuff. And last but not least, I cannot leave out the great Radio Luxembourg 208 from the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg in Europe. You may not have heard of a broadcaster called Stuart Henry. Stuart Henry used to be on Radio 1. He was a Scotsman, and he sadly developed multiple sclerosis during his latter years at Radio 1. And then when he moved on to Radio Luxembourg, he really struggled with broadcasting because of his condition. So his beautiful wife, Ollie Henry, who was never trained in broadcasting, never really had anything to do it, through love and determination, joined him on the radio, and they ended up making one of the most beautiful partnerships of late night radio I've ever heard, really. Stuart and Ollie Henry, she also used to be his news producer and reader, and she had a very sweet, beautiful voice. And I think that coming over the great 208 on medium wave with the little transistor radio underneath the bed, just the romance of all of that, that's where I kind of fell in love with radio, really. Two more names who were big influences on me from the Radio Luxembourg days. Sean Tilley. Now, I know that you've spoken to Sean. He's a great fella, still doing some great radio as well. He certainly influenced me. A very sharp and a very quick style of broadcasting. But you know what? He really knits it together, does Sean Tilley. What a fella. He was also on TFM up in the Northeast. And there's another guy called Bob Stewart, who sadly is no longer with us. I always remember that around about 2 o'clock in the morning, Bob Stewart would come onto Radio Luxembourg and he'd say, "Good night, God bless, wherever you are." And you know, what a voice he had. So really, I know that's a bit of a list, but there were my influences. And I think there's some good ones in there, Ben.
Yeah, brilliant. One of my influences was a man. Was Tony Blackburn ever on Radio Luxembourg?
That's a good question. I can't think that he was. I think he was on the Pirates, but I don't think he was on Luxy. So there's a question for him if you ever get him on, and good luck if you can get him on, because that would be great.
A lot of friends of mine know him very well.
Well, he's on your hit list, isn't he?
He's on the hit list along with others.
Jolly good. Yeah, that'll be a great podcast.
Bruno Brooks was number 2 on the hit list, so I've ticked him off.
Oh, great. I haven't listened to that one, Ben, but I will make it my business to listen to it. I'll look forward to that.
Brilliant broadcaster. Brilliant broadcaster he is.
Yeah, he's a brilliant broadcaster.
And also I'm trying to get Paul Gambaccini as well.
Wow. Well, that'll be a great acquisition if you can get Paul on, because he's another absolute legend.
As I say, the aim is to get loads more Bauer presenters on board as well.
So what's up next?
As we're moving on, question 3, what is your favourite part about the job?
Well, I think we've already touched upon some of this, really. I think it's connecting with people, and radio being the medium. I think it's, as I say, it's not just about all being behind the microphone, is it? Because that's the bit where you have to really make that one-to-one connection. But the opportunity to go out and meet people, and that started in hospital radio for me. So road shows, village fates, marketplaces, nightclubs, going out and meeting people. And that's a great way for people to get involved with radio as well, because a lot of the community stations are looking for people to go out and be part of maybe like the street crew if they've got a vehicle, and a road show if they're doing something in the community. That can be great. Even just handing out stickers and stuff like that, just saying hello to people. One of the things I used to like to do was record little vox pops. When I used to do the hospital radio, we used to record little dedications and vox pops, and we used to play them out on the air. So that's a mixture of meeting people is the best thing about radio, really. I think the other thing that I enjoy about the job is the creativity of it as well, because every time you either record a show or you're doing a show, you're constantly thinking about what you're going to say next, the timing of it, how it fits in with the music. And you're constantly working on that sound, aren't you? And hopefully we get it as good as what it can be, really. Because I think radio should flow, and that's the way that I try and do my radio, really. So meeting people is your answer.
Yeah, brilliant, meeting people and getting to know them. Question 4, how has COVID affected your life and line of work?
Well, as far as life is concerned, I suppose it's just made life a lot quieter. I've just seen much less people. because I have the radio work, I also have other work as well. I've been lucky enough to do both aspects of my professional career from home. So my radio studio at home also couples up as my other work as well. I can connect with people through, kind of mission control, if you like, in my living room. And a lot of radio has changed. There's a lot of people doing it from home now because the technology has just got so much better. So I suppose, to answer your question, just the amount of people that I've seen has just been much, much less, which has made life a little bit quieter, really. It's been a bit of a challenge to be able to just mentally keep on going, kind of lots of fresh air, minimizing contact with people, but just trying to engage with as many in different ways, if that answers the question. With regards to work, I actually don't do any of my radio at the moment from any studios and any radio stations. It's all coming from my studio at home, which again, I think is probably the way forward. I mean, 20 years ago, if you'd have said to people, we're going to do radio from home and it's going to be the norm, you'd have probably been laughed at a little bit, to be honest. But now it is literally, with everything in the cloud and being able to step into programs live through Live Mic and the technology, absolutely brilliant. The only thing that's kind of missing from that is the buzz of a radio station, because you do get a buzz in a radio station, and you kind of miss out a little bit on the connectivity with your listeners, because you get more of that when you're in the radio station. But you know what? We all have our challenges, and we all have to be creative, and we work through it. So that's kind of how it's changed the job, really.
Yep, that's brilliant, how to change the job and how to get yourself into the studio, and brilliant that you're working from home and you can do it from your own mobile base.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question 5 and last question on my list.
Okay, my friend, let's fire away.
What advice would you give to young aspiring broadcasters who are starting out?
Well, measure your expectations, have a bit of a game plan. I would say always have something in reserve as well. Don't make it your one main option. Make sure that you are capable of doing other things as well, because radio is a very competitive industry. You can be out of work in radio sometimes. It does happen. It's like any industry, you've got to be real about it. So I think you've got to be able to multitask, really. But with regards to getting into radio, I would say hospital radio, definitely. I would say that the community radio stations are definitely a great way, and not necessarily just always behind the mic. There's all of the things that we have spoken about, whether it be the road shows, whether it be handing out stickers, whether it be just talking to people, learning how to edit. You've got to learn the craft. You've got to learn how audio fits together. You've got to learn how to speak. You've got to learn when to pause. You've got to learn how to construct a radio link. You've got to learn how to embed the branding of the radio stations and the branding of yourself into the product that you're creating. And that takes time to do. A lot of people, I mean, it took me absolutely years to stop saying on the radio. And the way that I did that was by pausing. And you can get an opportunity to practice all of this through community radio and hospital radio. So I would say that was the way forward. But also spread your wings. Spread your wings as well. And just be humble and be good to people, and people will remember you for it, I feel. So that's the best advice I can give.
Brilliant. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us, Stu. Do join me again soon for another Chatbox podcast. But for now, please give it up for the legendary Stu White.
Ben, thank you very much. And can I just say thank you ever so much for having me on. I think what you do and the work you do is great. May it continue long, and may it prosper as well. Not just your podcast career, but your radio career. Thanks very much for having us on. You're the legend, and it's great to hear your work as always. Ben, it's been my pleasure.
You're too kind. I'm not a legend yet. I'm just a person who is starting out in the cutthroat world of radio.
Well, you're a lovely person, Ben, and keep it humble. And you're a legend in my mind.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do join me again soon for another podcast. Thank you very much for watching and listening. And that's, as I always say, wrap.